Are you ready to have your mind blown by the Focal Podcast? Because here it comes.
Well, why don't we get started? And why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself, where you're from?
Okay. So I'm Nicole, and I'm born and raised in Edmonton. So I've lived here my whole life. I never planned on being a photographer, but I'm here now, and I've been shooting full time for 10 years.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So was photography your first job? Did you start it right out of high school, or how did you get started?
No, I actually went to university to be a teacher. So while I was doing my degree, I was like shooting for fun on the side, like mostly like bringing point and shoots around and like photographing my friends. And then my husband gifted me a Canon Rebel T2i, which is like, at the time I was like, whoa, like I'm super fresh. It is still a great camera, but I was playing around with that and just posting to social media. And people would see it and say like, oh, I like your photos. Can you take photos of this, of my friends, whatever, or this event? And I would tell people like, oh, I don't like do this for real. I'm just doing this for fun. And just slowly, it kind of happened organically that I would shoot and share and then get asked to do more things. And then by the time I was finishing my degree, I remember like I was graduating and I was like, oh, I don't even want to do this. I just want to be a photographer, but I never in my wildest dreams actually think that I could do this full time.
Mm-hmm. So did you, after university, did you do photography like on the side of another job then, if you didn't think you could do it as a full-time job, or how did that kind of work?
So while I was in school, I was also serving. So I was serving, doing my degree. And then when I finished, the teaching market was really bad, bad timing. And at first I was really upset by it because, I just spent all this money on this degree. But then my boyfriend, now husband, was like, why don't you just like try photography for like 6 months and just see if anything comes of it. If it doesn't, then you can just apply for more teaching jobs and do that instead. And we even like wrote it on a calendar, and he was like, if you make like $0, then whatever. But he convinced me to quit my serving jobs also, because he was like, you'll just fall back on that and like spend more time doing things you don't want to do.
Right.
And that was really scary because I know a lot of people who are either part-time photographers or want to be photographers have these kind of like safety net jobs.
Yeah.
And different people have kids, or there's different scenarios of like why you need to have that. I was very fortunate that at that time, it was just the two of us sharing a basement suite. We could afford to do that. But not having that like backup and just having to give it like 100% really pushed me to go for it. So I think it was in 5 months of like not working any other job, just focusing on photography, that I was earning enough that I could contribute to like our rent and whatnot. And then by a year, I was full time.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Coming from having a teaching degree, what do you think that contributed to your photography career? Do you think it brought any positives, any different insights to your career, anything like that?
Definitely. Like, especially now that I'm so much so into the education part of photography, but even with confidence, looking like a respectable business because I could compose emails a certain way, social skills of talking to all different kinds of walks of life. Because, when you're teaching, you don't know you can't pick and choose who's in your classroom. So you're getting different personalities. And it kind of like helped me become a social chameleon. So I think that's really helped because so much of photography is such a customer service based job.
Yeah.
So, yeah, even before I got into like mentoring and like education now with photography, it definitely helped.
Awesome. Yeah. If you had to describe your photography style in a few words, how do you think you would describe it?
So I actually like really struggled with doing this until somebody described it for me. I
Oh,
think I was
okay.
actually doing like an interview or something. Somebody was like writing a bio thing about me and they said moody romantic and I was like,
Oh.
oh. I was like, I did not come up with that, but I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense because um it really made me dissect my work and I do see that there is like more like moody undertones, but I still
Mm,
try to make it look romantic. So that like mix of light and or like hard and soft, if that makes sense.
right. And
Yeah.
is that kind of what you're attracted to when you take photos, is finding like the hard against the soft, or what do
Yeah.
you look for?
Definitely. Yeah. And again, I didn't really realize I was doing it because I was just
Mm,
a certain way until other people pointed it out. But I noticed that even if I'm shooting something in maybe more of a dark setting or with like moody lighting, I'm still trying to make it look soft. Or if something is really in soft, airy lighting, I'm trying to add an element to make it moody. So um now that I like dissect and review my portfolio, I can see that contrast between all my photos.
right. And so
Mhm.
even before you kind of like knew what you were looking for, you had a certain area that you drifted towards, that you kept like all your photos kind of had the same theme. How do you think you developed that, and how do you think that's formed in your own opinion?
I think that's a really hard question to answer. And I get this a lot when I am like doing mentorships with photographers or workshops.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of people say that they struggle with style.
Mm-hmm.
And again, before I even really knew I was doing it, I was gravitating towards certain colors, certain tones, certain like posing aspects. So until I was forced to reflect on it, I didn't
Mm,
realize I was doing it. But when I got into it, I also, to a certain degree, I wasn't looking at a lot of other people's portfolios. And I think where a lot of new artists get caught up is that they're on social media so
mm,
much, comparing themselves to other artists' work, and they can find stuff that they like in light and airy, or dark and moody, or in bright colors, or in muted tones, and then it kind of confuses the direction
right.
they want to go to. Um, and the biggest solution that you could do is to keep shooting and retouching and find that like what ultimately you're gravitating to. But for me, I didn't even realize that I was gravitating to like blues and pinks and moody and romantic. Like it just kind of happened.
Right. Okay, yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So, when you're preparing for a shoot, what are 5 things that you cannot leave the house without?
5 things.
5 things.
Okay. So my phone,
Mm-hmm.
sure, because I always play music at my photo shoots.
Oh,
Because it likes, I think people can feel really awkward if there's any kind of silence, although I talk a lot. So you wouldn't. But I feel like music really helps make people feel comfortable and kind of like eases their nerves.
mm-hmm.
And I also like to take like Insta stories or behind the scenes at the same time too. So my phone, obviously my cameras. I'm a Canon shooter, so I have the RF or the Canon 5 RF and the Mark IV and my holdfast straps. I once forgot them like years ago. I've been shooting with them my entire career. So those are just like the crisscross camera straps.
Okay,
I'll
okay.
never I'll never forget them again. I was so like, what do I do with my hand? Um my think tank camera bag.
Mhm.
It has rollies on it, so it doesn't
Mm.
like one of those airport rollies. So you kind of feel like a loser when you're doing it. But it saves your back and it can convert into a backpack. So I can go
Yeah.
hiking with it. Um, and then for my last thing, I guess that would obviously be like my lenses. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Any bonus items that maybe like aren't photography related, but you can't leave for a shoot without them?
Oh, yeah. Snacks.
Oh, yeah.
I actually, fun fact, I always bring a backup outfit.
Oh.
So that sounds kind of like whatever, but mostly with weddings. I once was shooting a wedding and my second shooter and I were eating granola bars, but they had like a chocolate kind of cover in them.
Oh no.
So we were eating and it was like a hot summer day and some of it like got onto my dress. And just by chance, I had a different outfit in my car because I was like traveling. So I was able to change, but I was like, oh my gosh, I will never like not have a backup outfit, because imagine if you're shooting like a fancy wedding and like their clothes rip or they get like really dirty or something. So like backup clothes are like actually
That is a
really clutch
good
to
tip.
have.
I haven't heard that one actually ever. So maybe you just saved a couple photographers.
You never know. I'm glad I didn't have to learn the hard way, but I was like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I'm so nervous.
So when you're approaching shooting a wedding day, how do you prepare yourself and how do you get your gear all ready and everything like that? What is the process?
My biggest piece of advice for getting into a good headspace for a wedding is to wake up extra early and not rush. I can think of a few weddings, like when I first started, that I'd give myself hardly any time, that I couldn't like eat breakfast before. I'd be scrambling to find my outfit the day of. A whole bunch of things that you only have to do it once or twice to be like, that sucked. So I never want to like burst into someone's wedding day and be like sweating and frazzled. So I always like to lay out what I'm wearing the night before, double check the clothes to make sure there's no like, again, rips, loose threads, all that kind of fun stuff. I always like pack a little lunch before, make sure I leave enough time to do my hair, makeup, shower, and like have breakfast and do all of that stuff. And then lots of extra time to get to the venue, just in case there's accidents on the road, or, you know, if it's festival season and something shut down or like a road shut down. My biggest thing is not rushing before I enter a wedding day. Cause I want to be like the calm presence on the day, not the like frazzled person.
There's probably enough frazzled people.
Honestly, there is. And I feel like it's hard for me to create when I'm not feeling like confident and like relaxed. So you're only setting yourself up for failure if you're like rushing around before you even get there.
Right.
Yeah.
You work a lot with one of your friends who I believe is your makeup artist. Is that correct?
Yeah. She's not my makeup artist, but I wish.
You guys partnered together a lot for a lot of your weddings. Is that correct then?
So her name's Jana. She's a hair makeup artist.
Yeah. So what's it like to kind of work on a team and have a friend presence there with you? What's that dynamic like?
It's the best. So it's funny. Jana used to work at Mac. She also went to university for like sciences. She was going to be a doctor and then realized that makeup was more fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, she used to work at Mac and she was doing hair and makeup on the side, or sorry, just makeup on the side. And I would hire her occasionally. And then I was shooting a video promo for work in Vancouver, and her and I were having dinner with a mutual friend, and I already knew she was so talented. I had hired her for other things. And I was like, oh, I wish you could come with me to this. And she was like, yeah, she's like, I would totally come. And I'm like, would you actually fly to Vancouver and come and do hair and makeup for this? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, don't you work? She was working another part-time job. She was like, yeah, I'll call in and just tell them I have diarrhea. I love you so much. And she like right then and there, she booked a plane ticket and came out with me to Vancouver to do this. And like was literally on phone with work being like, yeah, I have diarrhea. I can't.
That's true friendship.
True friendship. She was like, nobody questions diarrhea. I was like, that's true. And ever since then, I was like, her commitment, I was like, wow. That was years ago. And now we work together for like almost all of our shoots. I get hired to shoot kind of like all over the world, and those clients book her as well. During the pandemic, we ended up building houses like next to each other.
Oh my gosh.
So even when we're not working, she just like pops over, like we see her all the time. So it's awesome getting to work with her.
Yeah.
See her like all the time.
Going back to how you prepare for weddings, how do you tend to dress and make yourself appear when you're approaching shooting at a wedding?
I always like to overdress. Like you'll never find me in denim or even a hat for weddings. I think there's like hats can look dressy as well, but I like to look like I'm attending the wedding myself, like a polished guest, so I don't stick out.
Mhm.
So I tend to wear like all black, with like black or muted footwear, and then like just like my hair like done up like a wedding. So
Mhm.
again, I never want to be wearing something that guests are going to be like, who's that? Or stand out that way.
Right.
I'd rather be confused as a guest than anything. So I can like be sneaky and get sneaky photos of people.
Okay. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
Neutral. Keep
Yeah.
like invisible kind of.
Yes. Yes.
Cool. So what is one of the funniest things that's ever happened to you while you are out on a shoot?
Okay. So this just happened. Oh my gosh. Okay, so at the beginning of October, I had a wedding, and normally I have a second shooter, but this was only 2 hours. So I was like, okay, like 2 hours, I can do it. And it was a really small group. And the week before, our best friend was like, oh, I caught some sort of like stomach bug, and it's like, it's going around. It's like where you like projectile vomit. It's like a horrible thing. And I was like, oh no, that's so terrible. And then one by one, our friends started like falling like flies. And I was like, I was so cocky and I was bragging. I was like, oh my gosh, I have such a good immune system. I never got it. And this wedding was an hour drive away from my house. And as I'm driving, kind of like, my pants feel a little tight. And I'm like, that's okay. Keep driving. And I'm like, my throat's a little dry. I get to the wedding. And right before like I enter the thing, I had to pull over and throw up. And I was like, oh my gosh. But I was like, okay, I feel way better. Everything's going to be fine. And I have a small child, so I had baby wipes in the car. So I just like wiped my mouth. I was like, okay. Went in, shot the ceremony, no problem. Got to family photos, and I was like, oh no, my mouth is dry again. So from there, I kept finding like little excuses when they like looked busy enough, because like the family was like interacting and hugging and doing something, like, oh, I'm just gonna go get a memory card. I'd go to my bag, throw up, get a memory card, go back, like, shoot for a bit, and they're like, oh, I just gotta change my lens. Went to a bush, threw up, went back, kept shooting. And then the bride had to go to the bathroom. I was like, okay, great. I'm just gonna change a battery. Went to my camera bag, threw up 3 more times.
Oh my gosh.
While I was waiting for her to come back, I'm like, I'm hiding behind trees. No one can see me, because this is like a group of like 15. I just laid in the cold grass and I was like, oh my God, it got me. She came back. I could see her in the distance, got back up, shot again for a while. And then, so the 2 hours is up and I'm like, thank God, this was only 2 hours, because I could not have done a full day. And it was near the end and they're like, oh, thank you so much. They're hugging me, and they hugged me just a little tight. And I was like, thank you so much.
Oh, no.
Go to my car, and I was just like, so much. And to like, after the wedding, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't think anyone saw me. I think I like got away with it. I felt so bad for this like beautiful property. I just threw up all over. This was like a wedding venue property. And they wrote me after, they're like, thank you so much. You made us feel so confident, so good, like so great working with you. So like, still to this day, I don't think anyone knew that I was so sick. I was like sweating, and like, I think I threw up 12 times at this.
Oh my gosh. You were a trooper.
I was like, if this would have been any longer than 2 hours, like,
you might have had to call it.
Oh my gosh, I don't know what I would have done. So yeah, that was the worst thing that's ever. Worst / it's funny now, but like the drive home. I was just driving home. I had like baby wipes beside me and like mascara running down my face, and I was just like, it made me think of the Bridesmaid episode or part where she's like, I just shit in the street. And I was like, that was me, but like vomit.
Oh my gosh.
And then my friend teased me relentlessly, because they were like, remember, you were like my immune system. I was like, I know. Instant karma.
Oh, you need to like knock on wood before you.
I know. I was like, I'm so sorry. I was literally like, I'm gonna start going to church. I'm gonna do one good deed a day. But yeah,
start doing all the good luck things.
I know. I was like, but I was so glad, because again, it didn't like interfere with them, their pictures or their day or anything. I was just like, man, that was That was dicey.
Oh man.
Yeah, no. Just talking about like diarrhea and vomit on a podcast. No big deal.
We're
What
really
the
comfortable here.
I know.
Oh, oh my gosh. Okay. So in that story, you had mentioned that you have a little one at home.
Yeah.
What has it been like running your own business and having a young family?
It's interesting. Obviously it's harder, because your time is divided. Like this morning, even, daylight savings is like the worst when you're a parent because doesn't understand that there's a time change. So today she woke up and chose violence that she wanted to be Elsa for school because she's like not over Halloween. So she has an Elsa costume. So I like had to get up and try to get ready while like getting her lunch and all that stuff ready. Luckily my husband, he's a tattoo artist and he can kind of choose his own hours. So I get his help in the morning, which is awesome. But yeah, like we had to send her to daycare in like a full Elsa costume with a crown. And she was devastated. She didn't have her like little like Elsa braid, but I was like, it is what it is. She went to daycare like that while I was like getting ready. But it like there's obviously times that it's more difficult, just because your time is divided. And like your chosen time. Like I want to spend more time with my family. But I also think it makes me appreciate photos and memories and documenting these things for others so much more. Before Charlie, I never shot family photos or didn't really care to do that. And now I have such a deeper appreciation for shooting stuff like that. So, I don't do it all the time, but for past clients, I will do like babies or family or stuff like that. So
that's sweet. Like a nice little continuation on.
Yeah. And then it's amazing because I have so many clients where I've met them through like headshots or boudoir and then done engagement photos, weddings, to then like their family. So it's really cool to see that progression.
Yeah. And it's probably so nice for them also to have like all these like photos that progress through their life that like all match kind of, they have the same. Yeah.
I literally just went to, pardon me, a client's house 3 days ago, and they had originally planned their wedding with COVID, but I had shot their engagement photos, their initial like micro wedding in Kananaskis, and then their full wedding in Edmonton when they could have one, to maternity, and then just photograph their baby being born. And I'm like, it's so cool. I would have never met this little baby or been a part of all these things if it wasn't for like those photos I did forever ago. But when I was in their house, like, I'm not kidding, they have printed photos from every single session I've ever done with them, and they're all over their walls. So that was really powerful because we're so used to seeing photos on a screen that you're like, oh yeah, like whatever. But when you see it printed, you're like, wow, it's like artwork. It's so different.
And you can tell that like that clearly had like an impact on them where they're like wanting to show off all these progressions.
Yeah.
Awesome. You mentioned that your husband is a tattoo artist, which is another creative field. What do you think can you speak on what it's like to have a household full of creatives? Does it create upsides? Does it create downsides to maybe not like having a balance?
So John actually went to school for teaching as well. So we met in university. But I don't know if there's any downsides to it. If anything, he understands more so when I'm like, oh, I've got to edit tonight, or I've got this like random schedule, because his can be pretty random too, especially now that he has a lot of out of town or out of province clients. So if anything, I think it's better because we get that we don't have a 9 to 5 and we can have weird schedules and weird hours. And then again, we can design our life around maximizing family time. So I think it's only been positive.
That's awesome. That sounds so fun.
Yeah. Plus I can get like basement tats whenever I want. So I'll like, I think I want this cute flower. And he's like, oh.
That's awesome. The only thing Maybe it causes some impulse tattoos though sometimes.
Yes. Oh, definitely. I know. Knowing that it's like easy access, I'll be like, I want this. And he's like, that's dumb. And I'm like,
Oh. Well, at least he can like say it back to you.
well, he'll be honest because he's like, if you get something dumb, I have to look at it forever. So he's like, you're not allowed to get like trendy, like stupid tattoos. So it has prevented me as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What do you think is one of the hardest parts about running your own business and kind of being an entrepreneur?
I think the fact that you have to wear so many hats.
Mhm.
I know so many talented artists that are really struggling with accounting or social media, marketing. So I think you see a lot of people get into the industry and do really well for a bit, or that they're clearly strong photographers, but they just can't sustain it because there's so many hats you have to wear.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where now I think it's so great. I know Focal's done a great job with helping with like educating people, and even having obviously like your basically all inclusive websites to help people keep on track and keep organized. Like that just wasn't a thing
Mm-hmm.
when I started. It's kind of like enter at your own risk. Look, so now there's so many amazing pieces of software. There's so
Mm-hmm.
workshops, education, things to help people. But I still think the hardest thing is just having to have a creative brain be everything all at
Mm-hmm.
once.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. So your biggest tip is like do the workshops, like talk to people, kind of brand, like reach out for help, kind of.
Yeah. I know, especially in Alberta. I know you're in Victoria, but in
Mhm.
Alberta, the photo community is really, really good and really supportive. And if people put it out there that they're struggling, there's always going to be people offering to help.
Yeah.
I hear it's a mix depending on where you live, but
Mhm.
I think that if you're out there supporting other artists and you reach out to somebody for advice or for help, or you ask if you can sign up for like a mini mentorship or anything, like people are generally like willing to help for that.
Mhm.
But a way that I excelled my career early on was going to workshops, meeting other people, finding out what people do, how it works for them. Even I was just at the Focal workshop as an
Mhm.
educator a few months ago. And while I was there, one of the other instructors was talking about Aftershoot, like a program that he uses.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh, that's cool. Kind of looked at it, but I was kind of like set in my way of like, I use this system, it works.
Mhm.
But then he showed me how fast and how great it was. And I just thought it was so cool that I'm like, okay, I'm a pretty seasoned artist, but I'm still learning and growing even just from going to this workshop. And I was a
Right.
teacher. So I think it's a pretty amazing tool if you can access workshops or other educators, mentorships to
Yeah.
into your toolbox.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, awesome. So, kind of on the same note, was there ever a point in time where you felt like being an entrepreneur was too much and you wanted to quit and you wanted to take a step back from being a photographer?
Yeah, like recently. So I had a few I feel like October and August was really hard. I had a few couple rough months where my workload was so heavy. This was my last year of playing like COVID catch-up weddings. So
Mm.
I had a lot of weekday weddings on top of my Saturday weddings. Um, and this is because a lot of clients wanted to hold on to their original date, but then just move it a year. And these are people that I have relationships with. So like I still want to be a part of their day. And I'm really bad for being like, oh yeah, it's fine. And like I'll figure it out later. And then when you're actually shooting, you're like, oh my gosh, it's so much work. So I was shooting a lot. I had a bunch of technology things fail. So my phone got ran over.
Oh my gosh.
The computer died. And then I got laryngitis for like 3 weeks. I'm like one of like my laryngitis happened when I was teaching at a workshop for Canon. And
No.
so literally I had to be like, it's Nicole. I was like, oh my God. I had a really bad health scare, and then we found my dad's cancer came back, and it was
Oh
like
no.
it was literally so many things that it happened in such a condensed time frame that I was really struggling with being like, okay, picking up my camera doesn't feel fun because I'm just so overwhelmed,
Mm-hmm.
so stressed. But once those other things in my life started to like calm down a little bit, and as I am now getting into my like slower season, I can breathe a little bit more. I can see that it's not photography that makes me feel that way. It's just
Mm.
like my cup was like overfilling.
Yeah. Well,
So
that's a lot of things to like pile on to like even people that aren't running their own business. So
yeah,
I'm
it
so
was
sorry. That
yeah,
is,
it was just so many, and there was so many other little things, like our little girl got sick and like so often because she was in daycare. There was just so many things that
yeah.
happened all at once, to the point that I like share a lot on social media, that I was trying to do this like while traveling a lot for work too. I think in
Mm.
October, yeah, October, I was home 6 days out of the month because I was
Oh my
so,
gosh.
so all of those things are happening and then
Yeah.
being home. So long story short, I think um when you feel that way, like you don't know if whether it's photography or creative industry or even just your job feels like it
Mm.
is for you, it's really important to take a step back and try to look at, like, is it something about that industry that you don't like,
Mm-hmm.
the time that it's taking from you, or is it like just the joy is gone when you do it?
Right.
For me, if I pick up my camera, and especially when I'm photographing people, I'm like, it's instant, like, oh, I love this.
Yeah.
I know it wasn't that, but I'm definitely like, again. Oh yeah, and that also during that time, that's when I had that wedding where I was like
Yeah. So it was
vomiting.
just like, it was really just like
Oh,
piling
it
on.
was hot. Like it was to the point that every time I told people a new thing, that I was like, I don't know I don't know what happened or what I did, but like, yeah. But I got through it, and how things are like good. But yes, at
Hopefully
that.
you're on the other side of
Yes,
that
and people
hill.
kept sending me things being like, "It is Mercury in retrograde," like, trying to help me find reasons of like why all this was happening. Um, but yeah, everything's all good now. But I did like have moments where I was like, I don't even want to be shooting right now because I'm just
Yeah.
so overwhelmed with life.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah,
I'm glad you feel like you're on the other side of that hill.
it's like it's mostly stuff that's funny now. Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot.
So kind of talking about that joy that you said, like you still feel, so that's how you know it's not the industry. What are some moments when you reflect back on your career where you really like felt cemented as a photographer, you felt the joy? It's just like moments you go back to over and over again.
I think luckily, like in my field, there are so many moments that you
Mm,
feel that way. Especially with weddings. Like, I mean, I know I feel that with engagement sessions, maternity, like so many other things as well. But I think having a front row seat to such an intimate day for people when you're a complete stranger to them is
mhm,
really powerful.
mm,
To see them share vows, the way they interact with their family, the closest people in their life are there, and you get to see it all. And especially for photographers, you're spending the whole day with them. So you get to see all the highs, the lows, the anxiousness, the happiness, like you see every little moment.
mhm.
So I don't take that lightly. And I know that it's a really big deal that they've chosen me to be there. It's not just because they like pretty photos. They want like a good energy around them for that day. So yeah, there's tons of times. But it sounds funny enough, but where it really hits me is when people have slideshows at their weddings, and I'm like watching like them as like a little kid, as a
Mhm.
baby, like go through all those phases of life. And I'm like, wow, like it's like watching a movie that I get to see, that I'm like playing a little part in. So it's like, yeah, I really love it. As you
Aw.
can tell, I love love.
You're in a good industry then.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely love it.
That kind of goes back to those like progressions that you're talking about. It seems like that's really like a big driving force for you.
Definitely.
What is one place that you could photograph in over and over again and not get sick of? Like one location.
One location.
Mm-hmm.
I've been really lucky to shoot in so many different places. And honestly, like shooting in a cool location is fun and whatnot, but as long as the location has meaning to them and has
Mm-hmm.
good light, I'm pretty
Mm-hmm.
happy. So whether honestly, like some of my like favorite places to shoot in has been someone's backyard.
Okay.
Like I had a beautiful backyard wedding in Edmonton, and it was just it was just like the lighting, like he grew up there, like he took his first step
Aw.
in the backyard. Like that was just so cool. That's like how lucky is that family that they have that space and they can do that. But then of course, like I just shot at the Andrews farm in North Carolina, and it's this like beautiful property. Like there's places that you can go to that are like awesome to shoot in, but
Mm-hmm.
for me, as long as it either has meaning or like the energy is like good there for the couple and it has good light, I'm happy.
Okay. How would you get around if they chose a location that doesn't have good lighting?
I would be honest about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pretty collaborative process when I work with clients, and I always send it like a welcome wedding guide to them that talks about lighting, clutter, times of day, things to be aware of, backups. And I tell them to go through it and let me know if they have any questions. And typically it does spark things saying, we're thinking of having our ceremony at this time or at this spot or whatnot. And then I'll offer my advice for it.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I don't think I've ever told someone, oh, that's just like not going to work. Like it'd have to be a pretty extreme situation for it to like, even like, I'm pretty confident in shooting like all forms of lighting, but in terms of what I love to do, it's like, obviously like that dreamy sunset light is like
Mm-hmm.
what I enjoy shooting the most and what most clients see in my portfolio of like wanting to hire me.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Um, so you've done a great job of turning your career in photography into a very educational platform, almost like an influencer platform. What was your driving force behind going further than just making it your career and almost making it a platform for yourself?
Um, Going back to when I first started, I was so eager to learn. And there just wasn't a lot of resources out there. There was like
Mhm.
YouTube and a couple things that were out there, but nothing like there is now. And
Mhm.
I still remember reaching out to other photographers and offering to pay them to go for like coffee,
Mm.
or, asking for help with locations. And like I understand too that there's a lot of work that goes into that stuff, or that people are busy and they have families, but it was a pretty like resounding like no, or like just no responses at all when I would ask when I first started. And it really made me realize that I would never want to be a roadblock in someone else's career.
Mm.
So I'm like really open when it comes to sharing information, and helping other photographers, because there is enough work, there is enough room for all of us.
Mhm.
And me, holding back information doesn't make me a better artist or anything. It just delays someone's progression. And it's,
Right.
yeah. So I think feeling that way early on, and perhaps also just having a background in teaching, is
Mhm.
like really want to be that person for others that um, that they can learn more, or can get ahead in this career, because truly there is enough work for everybody.
Yeah. That's so sweet. And that's something I hear on the podcast. Everyone I've interviewed has kind of said the same thing, where like they feel like there is so much competition, but they don't understand why, because like everyone's different. Everyone brings a
Yeah,
different style. There's enough weddings out there for everyone.
totally.
So I love that you kind of approach the educational platform as like wanting to get rid of that idea, because I think
Yeah.
it's so important in this industry.
Yeah. And I think too, it just becomes more fun when everyone's out to help each other or make each other
Yeah.
artists. And honestly, when I see a photographer shoot something really cool or an you know, a scene or a location or something that I'm like, oh, that's so awesome. It
Mhm.
just makes me want to get out there and shoot too.
Yeah.
So, but I think that's because I'm now in a space where I feel good about my work. I am open with other artists, but I think if you're just starting out and you're trying to learn, it's easy to feel frustrated. So those are healthy and like normal feelings to feel like
Mhm.
jealous or intimidated, but it's just important to turn that into um, feelings that will make you resourceful in your business instead
Mhm.
of roadblocking you in it.
Yeah. Or like even just recognizing them and saying like, oh, well, how do I move past feeling jealous? Like, how do I grow from those feelings?
Yes. Yeah.
Um, a lot of photos seem to capture very intimate moments between
Mhm.
couples. Are you directing a lot of those posings, and how do you keep it from getting awkward or nervous? Is it more just the couples you end up choosing, or are there certain strategies that you approach the situation with so that it
Are you
alleviates?
referring to like boners?
No, like I am just imagining like you're capturing very intimate moments, and I'm like imagining getting very nervous and flustered, like having someone like be there.
Yeah, I know. I do get asked about this quite a bit. I am very directive in what I shoot. And I know everyone has different approaches in how they shoot. Some people are very quiet.
Mhm.
They just like things to unfold. But I'm definitely more directive. I'm talking and cracking jokes the
Mm.
entire time
Mhm.
during a session. I have like a very sarcastic humor. And by bringing out this like sarcastic, self-deprecating humor, it makes people laugh. It makes them feel comfortable. So I think that does help for sure.
Mhm.
But I like to set up something where I get them into a position and then crack a joke and then get all of those like genuine, like little moments
Okay.
after that.
Yeah.
But basically, I'm talking the whole time and holding my camera up here, and then I'll crack jokes or like say little things and then get them laughing or doing whatever and just keep shooting while I'm doing it.
Mm.
And even when I'm talking to them and just like talking and I have my camera like this,
Mhm.
I won't fully put it down because in the time that it takes for my camera to go down and something to happen to go up here, I may have missed it.
Right.
So I like to keep like my camera pretty like up close and like ready so that I can capture all that stuff. But yeah, I think talking a lot, having music playing, making
Mhm.
sure people feel really comfortable with you is so key. You know, I never just have someone come in and say like, all right, let's take off your pants and let's do this. Like I'm there's a lot of like warm up stuff that we like chat about and whatever too.
And so you're giving them lots of directions as well.
Yes. Yes.
Mm. How did you learn how you cue different poses, like what to say to get them to look the way you're envisioning?
A lot of it's just like for how long I've been shooting for.
Mm, mhm.
And I used to shoot boudoir quite a bit. I still do, not as much anymore, but I used to pretty like I used to shoot that quite extensively. So I think all that time that I spent doing like more intimate posing and making people feel comfortable really played into how I photograph wedding
Mm,
and portraits and even just like headshots. Like I like to take like a simple headshot and add little elements of it so that it feels maybe more editorial or more
mm.
intimate than just like you know, the triangle like power.
The classic like
Yeah.
headshots that you
Buy this house for me. Yeah, I really pride myself on like I want people to look at my photos and look at a photo of complete strangers and to feel something.
Mm,
And then I know if they've done that, I've done the right job on, you know, posing and like creating a moment or showing a moment. And then added obviously like other elements into it. But
Right.
I think that's a really powerful thing. If you can look at someone's work, at a picture of strangers, and you feel something at all from it.
100%. And I totally get that from your photos. Every time I look at them, like I'm just like, oh, like there's something behind this photo. Like they tell a story, and I think it's so beautiful to look at them and like see that.
Thank you. That means a lot.
When we first started working with you, yours was my favorite portfolio to like go on and like scroll through. I was loving them. It was so fun getting to like see the progression of your website and like seeing it build, because I was like, oh my gosh, are you working on Nicole's?
I love my website so much, so much. I feel like I finally have a website that has all of the elements that I'm like trying to project into my work. Like, that was the highest compliment I got from my other friends, because almost all of my friends are in some sort of creative industry, like whether it's hair and makeup artists, interior designers, they're all like creatives somehow. And so many of them were like, okay, this website feels like you made it. Like, it's like it's not just like, this is my website. So I think that's a huge testament to you guys and to the designers behind it, because yeah, I definitely love how it's all come together.
Yeah. Oh, I love that for you, because it's just, yeah, it's one of my favorites as well. That's the one I go to show off. Like whenever we're showing up, I'm like, look at Nicole's.
That's awesome.
After looking through a lot of your photos, like I've mentioned, you seem to travel the world with your photos, and you've been, it feels like, everywhere. What are some of the most amazing places that you've gotten to go?
So I love different places for different reasons. But I remember when I booked a wedding in Australia, I was like, okay, wow, like they love my work enough that they're going to fly me like across the world. Like there's literally so many other people that are closer than I am. So that was a huge moment. That was a really powerful moment for me. Knowing that out of anyone, they wanted me to come that far. And then other places like Ireland, Switzerland, like saying it just feels like you're like, ooh, but you know, I went there. But I think, like I said, as long as there's really good light and good people, like I'm typically happy as a photographer. But obviously, it's really nice to be able to create a unique love story in a unique spot for clients. Sometimes it can get hard if you're revisiting the same venue all the time to spark creativity or to like challenge yourself. So obviously, getting to travel for work is such a privilege, and it does help make you feel more creative, like challenge different locations.
Probably like creates like a refresh as well, because you like go to a new place and you come back and you're like, okay, I'm ready to like try new things or something.
Yeah, 100%.
That's awesome. Okay, last question. If you could give a piece of advice to yourself when you were just starting out, what would it be?
To rent gear. Or that you don't need every little gadget to make you a professional. The hardest part for me with becoming a photographer was actually being able to say it to people. I remember, obviously, I was in a new career and I felt very insecure. So if people asked me what I did, and especially if John was there, they would say like, what do you do? And I would say, oh, I take photos, but I used to be a teacher. Like I have a degree. And I would always say that. And I would never say I'm a photographer and just leave it at that.
Right.
And we were working a charity event, and I was donating a session. So like I was like showing that like I was a photographer there, but somebody at our table asked, and John pulled me aside and he was like, why do you do that? And I was like, what? And he's like, you always say like, oh, I take photos, and then you bring up teaching. And I was like, I don't know. And he was like, just say like, I'm a photographer, and just like leave it. And it sounds so like whatever, but it was I still like remember that moment. And I think about that, like how hard it was just to say confidently, like, I'm a photographer. And I would feel like I'd have to own backdrops and all this lighting and have all this equipment to like make me a photographer.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like, so often now when I'm teaching other artists and they're like, hey, what lenses do I have to buy? What do I have to do? And I was like, you need to just like focus on the artwork, what you love to shoot. All you need is one good body and at least one good lens, and then figure it out from there. So if I could go back and tell my old self, would to be like, not be so hard on yourself, just take a breath, focus on like the key essential things you need, and like take your time from there, and don't go out and like buy everything. Stop bringing up teaching.
But I feel like that's an amazing piece of advice though, because not everyone are gonna have people like your husband John who is gonna be like, hey, you can call yourself a photographer, like you've earned it. And so I think that's amazing for people to hear. I think it's just a good reminder that like you deserve to call yourself like what you've earned.
Yeah. And it's funny because I've talked to other creatives, like my friend who's an interior designer, and she said it was the same thing. She used to be a teacher. She said one of the hardest part was introducing myself as like, oh, I'm a designer. Like, I feel like you have imposter syndrome a little bit when you say those things, and it takes sometimes or certain projects to make you like, okay, no, I've earned that title. So, or again, just supportive people in your life telling you it's fine to say that. So, yeah, not getting too caught up on those things is really important.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's amazing. That's an amazing place to leave it off. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today. This was an amazing conversation. We really appreciate you coming on here.
Thank you for having me. And sorry, I got so gross.
That's okay. It's keeping it interesting. You know, we're keeping them on their toes. They did not click on this episode expecting what we talked about.
Her photos are so pretty. What did she talk about? Diarrhea and impulsive vomiting.
Oh my gosh.
I think at one point I said boner too. Hire me.
That's okay. You know, if anything, we got people laughing.
Yeah. You know, it's daylight savings. It's getting dark. People need humor.
Exactly. So, it's getting cold.
It's cold. Yeah. We need to laugh. It's important.
We need to laugh. Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So if people want to find you, Nicole, what platforms can they find you on?
I would say I'm the most active on Instagram. So my handle's just at Nicole Ashely. But if they want to work with me, then you can email me at hello@nicoleashley.ca.
Perfect. And just to mention, you do the mentor programs. So if anyone's interested in that, because we were talking quite a bit about it today. So
yeah. And you can do online or in person.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Nicole, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.